Cool. And all your.
Okay, so yeah, looks like everyone is in the class, and it's really cool to see where everyone is joining from. We have New Jersey, Alabama, North Carolina, Colorado, New York, Alabama, again, Texas. I myself am from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'll have our instructor tell you where she's from. We're gonna go ahead and I'll introduce her before we start the class. So like I said, my name is Michelle from Tombow, and we're really excited to have Beth Watson teaching you how to make holiday cards using our dual brush pens. If you have any questions at all during the class, feel free to drop them in the chat section and I'll do my best to answer them, and so will Beth. And without further ado, Beth, I'm going to hand it off to you to get the class started.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks, Michelle. So I'm really excited to be here tonight. I am coming to you from my studio in Fort Myers, Florida. And Fort Myers is about 2 hours south of Tampa on the West Coast. So I'm on the Gulf side. And I'm really excited. I've done I've hand drawn some tags. We're going to do some watercoloring tonight. I've been working with Tombow for, I don't know, 6 or 8 years now. I used to be on the design team, and now I am an ambassador with Tombow. I do quite a lot of teaching for them, and I'm also their representative on HSN Home Shopping Network. So I'm really excited to get started tonight. This is a fun class, and it's a fun set of markers that we have, and I'm going to be able to teach you a lot of great tips and tricks. We're going to do some watercoloring with the markers, which I love. It's like cheater watercolors. So I guess we can go ahead and switch over to the overhead cam. There we go. So today or tonight, I guess we're at tonight, aren't we? We're going to be working with the watercolor set from Tombow, which is available at Michael's. And what we're going to get in the set is we've got 5 colors of dual brush pens. We also have my favorite, the Mono Twin, which is a permanent marker, which works great with the watercoloring because it won't bleed or run. We've got a bullet tip on one end, and then we've got an extra fine tip on the other end. So it's basically like 2 markers in one, kind of like the dual brush pens. We're going to have a water brush in that set. So a water brush is really fun because you can take it everywhere with you. The shaft is filled with water, and then we've got the nylon bristles here at the top that we're going to do some blending with a little bit later. We again have my favorite, the 4H pencil. The 4H is a harder leaded pencil, so it gives you a lighter, more easy to erase line when you're doing sketching, especially on toothier paper like a watercolor paper. And we also have the mono plastic eraser, which is great for going back in once everything's dry. It's great for erasing those lines. Okay. So the other thing that is in this set is the blending palette, which is plastic. It's got all the colors on the back, and we're going to use that to blend some of our colors on the palette and then go right in. I'm also going to use some paper towel. So the way that we're going to clean the water brush is we're going to squeeze it and drag it across the paper towel to clean it. Okay. The other thing that I'm using primarily tonight is this smaller, it's a 5.5 inch by 8.5 inch tablet of watercolor paper, Strathmore watercolor paper. It's also available at Michael's. And what I like about it is for these tags, and I'm going to show you, basically we can fit 3 tags on one sheet of paper. So here's some of the samples that I did. So there's our little tag with the hot cocoa. I've got some mittens, and I'll show you some lettering on this tag a little bit later. We've got a fun Christmas tree. I've got some holly berries. I've got some dreidels, because I think Hanukkah starts on either, I think Thursday. But what I have done is, it's not live now, but it will be after the class. I have hand drawn 12 different tags that y'all can download and print for free. And I'll have that blog post up later today. My website is creativelybeth.com. And I will have all of that live a little bit later this evening. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put our watercolor paper away. Now, the one thing that I always like to do, whether I'm watercoloring or just picking out a palette for lettering, doodling, anything like that, is I always like to do a color chart. So now this is a color blending chart. And what I've done is I've taken each one of the colors, and it's the pure color going diagonally, but then I have blended. So for instance, this square is the 757 and the 885. And I've blended each one of the colors. So you can see, even though this set has some unique colors in it, it really does have a very wide variety of blending options. You can get a nice, cool green. You can get a warmer green. You can get some very nice purples in there and some great oranges. Okay. So that's just a little bit about the blending chart. We're not going to blend tonight, but I'm going to start out. Let's start out super easy with the holly berries. So I've drawn the holly berries, and a lot of times I like to do this nice sketch look. It's a double line. I just draw the same shape twice. It hides a lot of mistakes if you're drawing, and it kind of gives a nice sketch quality to your work. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get my blending palette out. I've got my paper towels down here at the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and start coloring. Now, there's several different ways that you can watercolor with the dual brush pens. The first way I'm going to show you, just make sure my water brush is ready to go. We'll go ahead and start out with the berries on our holly berry. I'm going to take 757, which is a kind of wine red color, and I'm going to lay that color directly down onto my berries. Doesn't have to be perfect. You just want a little bit of color there. This is called the direct method because we're putting the color directly on the paper. And you can notice how my lines are not bleeding because I've used the mono twin to sketch these. Okay. And then to start our water brush, you're just going to, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but there are indents right here along the shaft. And you're just going to squeeze those gently, and that will release the water into the brush tip. Okay. So I'll go ahead. Do I have that centered well? Yes. So just going to go ahead and start blending our two colors together and moving. I like to start in the center and move outward when I'm doing a shape. And we're just going to take a little bit of water, and we're going to blend those holly berries. You guys see that? And you can also definitely, if you've got dual brush pens or any water-based pen at home, you can definitely do this. You can also do this with just a paintbrush and water as well. Okay, so what I did to clean the brush is I pushed the water out of the brush tips and I drug it across the paper towel. And you just want to do that until the water is clear out of the water brush. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and do our holly leaves. And again, just going to scribble some color on here. This is the 249, which again is included in the watercolor set. And I think I'm going to add a little bit of the 993, which is kind of our golden yellow color. just around the edges. And that'll give us a warm green to our holly leaves. Okay. And again, I'm just going to start with a little bit of pressure in the center of my leaf. And I'm going to push outward with my water. And since this is a watercolor project, again, I'm not going to be concerned that I didn't fill in every space. And if I go outside the lines, like I just did right there, I'm not going to be concerned about that either, because I think that really leads to the homemade, the handmade, and the watercolor look of this particular project. Okay, so you can see how those colors blended together nicely. And we've got the variety in the shade. So it's not just flat and one-dimensional. Okay, we'll set that aside to dry. We'll go ahead. And you can, I don't know if you can tell, but the tip of my water brush, the bristles, have gotten a little bit discolored, which is perfectly normal. As long as the water coming out of the brush tip is clear, then you won't have a problem getting your colors muddy. Okay, so then I'm gonna move on. I've got some mittens here. I've drawn a little pair of winter mittens and then attached them. You can see that, okay? And this one I wanna do a nice purple. And I'm going to show you how we can go ahead and blend. This is the indirect blending method, because I'm going to go ahead and blend the colors on the blending palette. So I'm going to lay a little bit of 526 down on my blending palette. And then I'm going to, right next to that, I'm going to add some of the 757 on the blending palette. And then I'm going to actually drip some water onto the palette and let those two colors kind of blend. So then I'm going to dip my pen, my water brush, into the color. And then I'm going to add it directly onto my image on the paper. I'll pull some blue, I'll pull some of the burgundy, and we'll get a fun blended purple effect. This method, you'll notice, is what makes it a little bit different from the holly berries is the color is much lighter. It's more pastel than the direct method. The other thing that's nice about the watercoloring with the Tombow dual brush pens is you can add layers. So I can go back once this is dry and I can add some more color if I think that this has gotten too light. And once it's wet, I can go ahead and add, let's take some direct. I can add some more of the burgundy. I can pick up some of the blue directly, add a little bit more blue, and watch how those colors really blend. Okay, just like that. And again, I'm not worrying about my lines. If I go outside the lines or I don't have everything right inside the lines. Can you see that? Okay. And then I'm just going to take a little bit more of the color. And I'm going to go around my string and add some color. I'm going to kind of go back and forth between the blue and the burgundy and blend them together. So it gives a nice variegated look. Do a little bit more blue. And the fun thing too about tags is they're quick, they're easy, they're simple. And you don't have to worry about them being a masterpiece. Okay, so I went ahead and did a nice variegated line around. You guys can see that okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush on the paper towel, pushing the water out of the brush. I'm going to go back onto my palette, but I'm just going to pick up some of the blue. And I've got a little snowflake in the corner. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the blue, the very, very light blue, to my little snowflake there in the corner. Okay. So just like that, I'll go ahead and set him aside to dry. And the way that I like to clean the blending palette is just with a baby wipe. That will take the color and the liquid off of the palette and clean it and make it available for the next set of colors. Okay, so just a baby wipe. All right, the next tag I have is my dreidel. So I'm going to go ahead and use my 526 and my 993, my blue and my yellow. I'm going to go back to the direct method and put a little bit of color directly onto the tag. And again, I'm using watercolor paper. Just put a little bit of color right in the center. Doesn't have to be accurate. You don't have to fill in all the lines. And I'm just going to go ahead and get my brush started because these are little, so I'm going to use a very small amount of water. And I'm just going to go ahead, starting again in the center and blending out to the edges. Now, the one thing I have learned with watercoloring with the Tombow dual brush pens is the longer you leave the color on the paper without adding water, the more permanent the color becomes. So if I were to color these in and then walk away and come back tomorrow, it wouldn't blend quite as nicely as it does right after you put the color on. So this is a tiny bit time sensitive. I'm going to go ahead and add some color to the dreidel. I'm going to do the direct method. Again, I'm using the 526, the blue in the watercolor set. Just going to go ahead and, again, starting in the center of each one of my areas, adding a tiny bit of water and pulling that color out to the edges. Now for the face of the dreidel, I'm going to use the indirect method because I'd like a lighter blue. So I'm going to put the 526 directly on my palette. I'm going to add just a little bit of water. And again, since I have used my mono twin to draw these images, I do not have to worry about any of the images bleeding. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but on the dreidel specifically, I used the bullet tip on the outline, and then I used the extra fine tip to draw in the Hebrew letters. Okay, just going to go ahead and continue adding the color. And then once I let that dry, I'm going to go back in and I'll fill in the Hebrew letters on the side of the dreidel. Okay, so there we go. Can get that pretty close so you guys can see. So the more water you add to the color, of course, the lighter it becomes. Okay, go ahead and set that one aside to dry. I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush, same way that I have been. Just push the water from the barrel and pull your brush tip across a paper towel. And we'll go ahead and clean our palette. Okay. And then what I can also show you all how to do is I can show how some of the different types of lettering that we can add to the tags. So actually, let's go ahead and start. I have one of the mitten tags, and I've just gone ahead and with the pencil, the 4H pencil, I've drawn in warm winter wishes. So I'm going to again use my 757 and my 526. And I'm going to go ahead with the brush tip of the 757. Go ahead and do some lettering on my tag. And the nice thing about Tombow is the different pens that they have, the dual brush pens and the Fudinasukis, which are the smaller brush tip pens. There are sized, here, let me, I'm lettering and talking at the same time. It's not working out well for me. So Tombow on their website, tombow.com, tombowusa.com, they have sized lettering practice sheets. So since the tip of the dual brush pen is bigger than the Fudinasuki brush tip, they've got the perfect lettering sheets, practice sheets. So I'm just going to give a little bit more pressure on my downstrokes and a little bit lighter pressure on my upstrokes. Okay. And do warm winter wishes. And I always like to use the 4H pencil to add my lettering before I actually go in and letter. I'm just gonna go back. So the dual brush pens also have a bullet tip, which will give you a mono line, just a single line. And I can go back in with the bullet tip and clean up some of my lettering. Since this is watercolor paper, the brush tips are going to maybe show a little bit more of a ragged edge than they would on a smoother marker paper, for instance. So we can just go back through and clean up those edges. Okay, just like that. And then I'm going to add the winter. I always like to do a variety of printing and hand lettering when I'm doing cards and things like that. So I have a printing style that I do, and it's just printed letters. I normally go ahead and combine upper and lower case in the same word. And I print all my letters, and then I just kind of go back and add some serifs, which are the little feet on the top and the bottom of the letters. And that just kind of gives it a whimsical touch. Again, just my printing. But instead of doing a to and a from, I've just done a warm winter wishes on the front of the tag. And then you could put the to and the from on the back. You guys can all see that. Okay. And then on the holly berries, I can show you a nice shadow letter. So let's go ahead and use the green. I'm going to use the 249 from the watercolor set. And again, I'm going to use the bullet tip. And I'm just going to do a shadow letter. Still going to have serifs, but it's going to have a double. I don't know if you guys can see that. I've just done a double downstroke on the main part of the letter. And then I'm just going to fill it in with little stripes. So something that looks super fancy, but it's definitely very quick and easy to master. I don't know if you guys can see that too. And then I'll continue with my from down here. Again, I'm just doing a double line for the main body of the letter and then adding the rest of the letter in a single width line. Then I'm going to go back and add vertical stripes to each one of the bodies of the letters. And I'm doing all of this again with the bullet tip of the dual brush pen. Just to give you a variety. Not everybody is great at hand lettering, so I'm definitely a better printer than I am a hand letterer. So if I'm in a pinch, I'm going to do a style more like this. Okay, can you guys see that? See how close I can, oh, that's pretty close. Is that good? Can you guys see that? Okay. And again, I love the 4H pencil because it gives a very nice light line. It's not going to give a very heavy anything that you need to erase. So you can see there's a little bit of pencil line that's still there, which I can go back in and erase with my mono eraser. Okay. Let's see. I've got this tag again. Let's try this one. I can show you another one. Really simple and easy, kind of like we did with the winter. And just go ahead and do a to and a from. And then, so I like to combine my upper and lower case. You don't have to have it all in a nice line. You can do some up and some down, some high and some low, and just kind of put a little serif on it, the little feet. I usually put little mark in my O's as well. And you can just see how easy that is to make it look really nice. Another something that's not included in the set are the Fudinasukis. So your Fudinasukis are your smaller brush pens. They look like this. And the packaging is all in Japanese. One is a hard brush tip and one is a soft brush tip. And the way that I always like to remember it, so you can see, let me show you the difference. So you can see the difference in size on the two brush pens. So that's why it's nice that Tombow on their website has sized lettering practice sheets for each pen type. So my trick with the Fudinasukis is I don't know if you probably can't see it in the video, but one pen has gold stripes and one pen has silver stripes. So gold is a softer metal than silver. So I always know that the gold, the pen with the gold stripes is the soft tip Fudinasuki, and the silver striped pen is the hard tip Fudinasuki. That's how I tell the difference. So, and then we can go ahead. I can finish up the tags for you. I can show you how I finish them up. So we just have a regular square or rectangle. It's not a square, it's a rectangle. I've got a corner rounder punch, and I'm just going to go ahead and round my corners. Okay, so now I have a pretty rounded corner rectangle. And then I'm going to take my hole punch. And I just like to eyeball it. I don't usually measure. I'll just normally eyeball it in the center. And I'll punch a hole. And then I can take, I really like baker's twine. So I just can take a section of baker's twine and cut that. And then I just loop it through the hole and tie it in a bow like so. So that's basically how I finished all the tags today. So you can kind of see how that looks. I've got a couple other tags that I can show you how to watercolor. I think we still have time, Michelle.
Yes, you
Okay.
have time.
Okay, cool. All right, let's do a tree. Let's do the tree first. I like the tree. Okay. So for the tree, and then I can show you how to make brown. Very exciting. Okay, so for the tree, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of lay in some of our 249. And then I'm going to go back in because I like how the spruce pine trees kind of have that little bit of a blue hint to them. I'm just going to go in and add a little bit of blue here and there. Like I said, it's not precise or exact. And then we'll go ahead in with the water brush. And I'm going to start in the center again and just bring all of that out to the ends, to the edges. And again, the more water you add, you'll get a lighter. If you add a little bit less water, you'll get a little bit of a darker tone. So I can go ahead and just blend all the way down. I really like how this 249 green and the 526 blue blend together. They really do a very nice job with the colors. Okay, go ahead and blend a little bit more. And then a fun trick to do to kind of give it that watercolor effect. I'm going to bring this up a little bit so hopefully you guys can see it. Just going to drop some water droplets. I don't know if you guys can see how that spreads, but if you just drop some little water droplets onto your wet watercolor, kind of creates a little bit of a tie-dye effect. You guys see that? I don't want to move it too much out of the horizontal. So just to kind of give a different pattern, something different to do with your watercolors. And then to get our brown, I'm going to use a little bit of the 885, which is kind of our orangey red, and a little bit of our 249. Because any of your colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel will kind of blend to create a brownish tone. And we're going. It's a little bit more gray than brown. So we have our little tree trunk there. And then I'll go ahead and add the star here to the top. Add a little bit of the 993. And we'll watercolor that up. Add some water. Blend that out to the ends. And then I'm going to give this a blue background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the 526 again down on the blending palette, and I'm going to do a wash over the back. So I'm going to drop quite a bit of water onto my palette, blend all of that together. And then as I'm putting it on the watercolor paper, I'm also going to squeeze out more water and add that, the color and the water to the paper to get a really pretty light blue wash from that really dark, it's like a dark denim blue. I'll pick that up. And as I'm adding, I'm going to squeeze more water out onto my watercolor paper to create that wash effect. Give a nice blue sky. Okay. Pick up some more color off of the blending palette. I'll do the other side as again, I add more water. And I'm just filling in a majority of the background. I'm not being extremely precise. I'm leaving a little bit of a white edge around the tree. Okay. And again, I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush on the paper towel, squeezing the water out until the water runs clear on my paper towel. And then you can see how that's the final tag, how the tree turned out. It's a nice wash. This one, I got the blue into the green of the tree a little bit, and it created kind of a little starburst there, which I kind of like. Again, it leads to the handmade and authentic watercolor style. All right, let me go ahead and clean my palette. And yeah, I think we still have some time. Let's see. Let's do a fun retro. How about a retro Christmas ornament tag? Go ahead and do that. That'd be fun. I think I'm gonna use and do a little bit. I think I'm gonna use all of the colors. So I'm gonna go ahead and make the body of my ornament 757. I'm just gonna go ahead and put a little bit of color. I'm gonna concentrate around the edge. And then what is gonna happen is I'm gonna pull that color in towards the center, and that's gonna give me a tiny little bit of shading. Let me show you how I do that. I'm just gonna add a small amount of water, and I'm gonna pull the color from the edge toward the center, leaving a majority of the color at the edge of the ornament, which will create a shaded effect and lead to making the ornament look a little bit more three-dimensional. Once the watercolor dries, go ahead and continue. So I really prefer, I'm a bold, bright color type of a person. So I really do prefer the direct blending method when I am using the Tombow dual brush pens to watercolor, because it really gives me that nice, bright, vivid color palette. But you definitely, if you wanted a, lighter, more pastel appearance to your tags, do that indirect method where you're placing the color on the blending palette and then adding water and then adding your color to your image, because that will give you a much lighter watercolor effect. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see that. Let's see if I can get it really super close. So you can see a little bit of that shading. And again, if you want to manually go back, if you want it to be even more shaded, you can go back once this color is set up and dry. You can go back and add a little bit more color to the edges to give even more of a three-dimensional look. Let's do some blue in the center. I really like this color combo. Okay, so I added some blue to the center of the ornament, and I'm just going to go ahead and blend that out from the center to the edges. I'm going to leave it a little bit darker on one side than the other. Okay, clean my brush. And then I'm going to go green. Just add a tiny little bit of color. And again, if you've got a detailed area like that and you want to add the color, you can definitely add the color with the bullet tip instead of the brush tip of the dual brush pen. So we're just going to add just a tiny little bit of water to move that green around and fill in that space. My blue and my green are now blending, which is perfectly fine. I have no problems with that. You can kind of see how the blue has blended out to the green. It's kind of created a cool tie-dye effect. Okay. And then add some yellow. And again, it's really nice that my pen lines are not bleeding because I've used the mono twin. Just going to add a little tiny bit of color to each one of my scallops. And again, I'll have all these tags available for a free download on my website, creativelybeth.com. I love vintage Christmas tree ornaments. I don't know if anybody else does, but that's all I put on my tree is the vintage glass bulbs. I'm just going to use a really small amount of water here. Okay. Oh, I'm getting that green in there already. Oh yeah. And if you want to, if I waited until the green and the blue dried, then I wouldn't have as much blending issues. I wouldn't have them blending together on the paper. But since these are all wet still, they're blending out a little bit, but it kind of creates a cool tie-dye effect. I don't worry too much when I watercolor. I just kind of get in there and have fun. So that blended out a little bit more than I wanted it to, but it's still pretty. Happy accidents. Okay, we still have more time. Is there anything anybody specifically wants me to see me do? Michelle, what do we think? How are we doing on time?
I mean, you still have some time, but
Okay.
I haven't seen anyone ask to see anything specifically. I know there were some questions, some comments about using the water brush.
Yes.
People find that sometimes the water comes out really quickly. So if you have any tips on how you control the water coming out, I think that would be helpful if you go over that for some people.
Sure, absolutely. And there's definitely a learning curve with the water brush. So what I like to do, if I'm doing something that's very detailed, I'll do a little bit of a cheater move, is I'll actually drop out some droplets on my blending palette. Now that I'm going to pick up color, I won't necessarily, let me see if I can show you. So I've put a little bit of water down on my blending palette, and I'm just going to dip my brush in. But really what it is, it's practice. It's very much just practicing the pressure that you're giving the pen. And then now I'm doing just a little bit of pressure. But yes, if you're doing something that's very detailed and you're concerned about the pressure, I would put the water down on the palette and then just lift up a little bit of water and bring it over to your project. If you're doing something that's very detailed. But it really is just, you know, grab a piece of watercolor paper and just play until you kind of get the hang of it. It's definitely a skill. It's not something that you kind of pick up naturally, in my opinion. It's kind of like R, and then you can just kind of play. So that I just added just a tiny little bit of water, and then I stopped pressing. So a lot of it is about control and how much, you know, you squeeze and how much water you let out from the pen. And again, with watercolor, a lot of it is just being happy with the outcome, because I could draw a blue box 60 times and watercolor it 60 times, and each time it would come out a little bit differently. What I like to do with the to kind of get practice is I like to just do gradients. So I'll add a box of color and then I'll do a gradient and just bring that color out to nothing, to clear water. And that's kind of what I usually do. If I haven't used the brush pen in a while, I will go ahead and just do some practice on some watercolor paper. Does that answer questions? But yeah, usually it's just a little bit of practice.
Can you also do kind of, if there's a way to possibly put as many of the tags in frame as possible so people can see all of them?
Absolutely. Sure. We'll do the finished ones. Let's see. Here, let me gather these up so I can get them centered. There we go. These are the ones I did today. Okay. You see all of those? Let's see. We have the holly. Here's the hot cocoa. Nope.
Yeah, I think if you just put it right below the tree.
Go up, just
or,
go
yeah.
underneath of it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. There's the mitten. There's the other mittens that I did the lettering on. These are the ones that I haven't colored yet, but I have a poinsettia. I have a stocking. There's a gingerbread house. There's a snowman. And then there's presents. There's 12 altogether. I don't know if that's all of them. It doesn't feel like all of them, but I'll have all 12 uploaded to my website. And then the cool part about the hot cocoa one is I used the two reds. I used the kind of wine colored red, the 757, and I used the 885. And I put one color on one side of the tag and one color on the other and kind of blended it around all the polka dots. That one was kind of difficult because I had the polka dots in there. And then I just used, I blended these two colors together on the blending palette to create the kind of cinnamon color for the cinnamon sticks. You can see that one. Okay. Let's see. Do you guys want me to, is there any other one you want me to color real quick? I think we got what, 15 minutes or so?
I think you have like 10 minutes left. So
okay.
So far I've seen someone say the snowman.
Snowman? Okay,
so,
I can do that.
Yeah,
he's
perfect.
right here. Okay, let me just get some of these out of the way. Put them up there. I was trying to keep them in frame so you guys can see them. Okay, snowman. There he is. So this one, I'm actually going to start out with our snowman. Let me get this water off the palette. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of the 526, our blue, down on the palette. I'm going to add quite a bit of water. Kind of get a really, really super light blue. I'm just going to kind of go around the edges. You probably can't see this. Let me do it a little bit darker. And the nice thing too about adding color, so this is wet on wet. Can you guys see that? So basically what I'm doing is I'm going around the edge and I'm adding color. But then I can go ahead and pick up a little bit more color with the tip of my brush. And I can go ahead and add, there'd be a shadow underneath his hat. So I'm doing this elevated off the workspace here. So I just kind of go around his face in different places where I know there would be shadows with a really super light blue. Can you guys see that? I don't know if you can see it or not.
Yeah, I can see it.
You can see it? Okay. But once that paper is wet, you can definitely go in and add additional color. So say I want that shadow underneath the hat to be even a little bit darker. I'm just going to go ahead and add some more color that I've picked up off the palette. Okay. Paper towels. And we'll go ahead and let's do a green hat. I'm going to go ahead and add some green. That's the 249. Make sure my brush is clean. Go ahead and color in our little snowman hat. And again, I'm just pushing that color from the center out to the edges. Give a little. And then again with this hat brim, I'm going to try to do the hat brim a little bit darker because it would naturally be darker. So just try to think of where the shading would be on something. If you're looking for a more realistic effect, if you're looking for just adding color, just add color and blend it in just as you would a coloring book. Let's see. Let's see if we can make a good orange here on the palette. A more carrot nose orange. Let's see. That might be a little bit light. That might need a little bit more color. So I'm using the 885 and the 993. Trying to get a little bit more color. There we go. That's a better orange. Carrot nose orange. It's a little pink. That's okay. And again, I can go back in once that's wet. I can lift that up so maybe you guys can see it a little bit better. And I can just, if you just tap your brush into the wet, it will add more color right into his nose. Can you guys see that? So I think that's pretty good. Carrot nose orange. That's why it's really important, especially when you're doing the watercolor with the dual brush pens. It's really important to do that color chart so that you know what color combinations you need to make specific, to make your other specific colors. Because this set didn't have orange, but you know, we've just created a pretty good snowman orange. Let's see. Shall we do? We'll do some little burgundy polka dots. get my water brush started. This isn't going to take a lot of water, so I'm just going to tap into the water on my, I just put some clean water on my palette. I'm going to just use that tap method just because the colors around it, again, are wet. You can have patience and wait for the green to dry. You can get some nice, bright, vivid colors. Okay, there's our cute little snowman. And again, I can go back into this blue that's on my palette, and I can just kind of just draw lines of color over top of my little snowflakes just to make them look extra icy. It's been what, let's see, because it's been 2 years since I've seen snow. Went to Breckenridge, Colorado a couple of years ago for Christmas, and that was awesome. But it's very cold for this Florida girl. Very cold. Okay, let's see, color. I think I'm gonna do his scarf again with the green and the burgundy. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of color to each stripe. Let's do opposites here, opposite. Okay, I'll go ahead and color that in. Again, I'm gonna just, oh, my brush is not clean. Clean my brush. Get a little bit of water started. I'm just gonna use a very small amount. I'm trying to leave the majority of the color up at the top of the scarf where it is on the snowman's neck. So it gives it a little bit more dimension. And I'm just using a really very light pressure. I'm just putting a tiny little bit of water out onto the paper and just kind of pushing it around because I want to be in control of where that color is going since this is a more detailed section of the project. But again, if you wanted, you could also put the color down on the blending palette and add it right from the blending palette onto your snowman. Let's see. Should we give him a what? Blue and green striped scarf? Does that sound good? Maybe. Just add a little bit of color. Okay. And again, I'm just going to start my, oh, that water brush is empty. I used up all my water. Okay. And the other nice thing about the water brush is that the bristles are nylon. So they definitely, I mean, you can see I've used that quite a bit. The bristles have become permanently stained, even though I've got clear water coming out. But it still has a really super, you can see how super fine that tip still is. So you can really get into the detail work with the brush tip. And that's what makes it really nice. And the cap, I mean, I've thrown this water brush in my purse. I've thrown it in a backpack. I've taken it across Europe with me. So it really definitely, and it doesn't ever leak. I've never had it leak once in my purse, in my backpack, anywhere. So I really love it for traveling. I do a lot of sketching and I like to add a little bit of color to my sketches. Okay, so there's our snowman. The orange is dried a little bit pink. So I could go back and add a little bit more. Just going to go ahead and add a little bit more color to his hat, add in some of the yellow. And that's the 993. And there we go. There he is.
That's adorable.
Thanks. So, but yeah, would have never guessed that from this color combination, you know, you're going to be able to get that nice of an orange. So how are we doing for time, Michelle? Good?
Well, it is actually 7 o'clock.
Oh,
and
okay.
I haven't seen any other questions.
No other
roll in.
questions?
Just
Okay.
that everyone's really enjoyed your class.
Oh,
So I'm
good.
glad to hear that. Do you have anything
Yes.
you want to say to everyone before we all hop off?
I just wanted to show a little bit about the versatility of this set. It's extremely versatile. So there's just some flowers that I did, and I just went ahead and watercolored over them. Same set. This is the watercolor set. So you can see, you know, how versatile it is. There's a floral globe that I did. Same thing with the watercolor set. There's a little lettered quote to think outside the box. Again, did the same thing, watercolor set. I added fun little patterns to my letters with the Mono Twin permanent marker. And then I also drew this pretty butterfly. And all of those colors that you see on that butterfly are in this watercolor set. So it's really super versatile. I love it. So that is all I have today. And I really appreciate everyone coming out and watercoloring with me today. I'd love for you, if you download the tags and color them, I'd love for you to tag me on social media. I'm at CreativelyBeth. Tag Tombow. Tombow loves to repost other artists' work on their Instagram. And I really appreciate y'all coming out. And oh, look, Mary, I love that. From Diana. Excellent job, Diana. I can see, sorry, you guys are all kind of a little far away, but yes, that's lovely, Diana. I love your hot cocoa. That looks wonderful. So thank you guys so much. Oh yes, very good. Nice. Wendy, Emily, very nice, guys. Super cool. Love it. Love it, love it. Marilyn, nice holly berries and a tree. Emily Lee, very nice. Great job, guys. I love it. I love the creativity. And Jenny did a great one too. Very nice. Okay. Well, I'm going to sign off now. I appreciate everybody joining me tonight. And I hope everybody has a very happy holiday. Bye-bye.